Indie games have been around a very long time, probably longer than most people think. Most of that time they've been overshadowed by big budget titles from large corporations, but in the last decade or so, indies have had a major resurgence. With game engines such as Unity and Unreal being readily available for public use, the landscape looks completely different now compared to the early 2000s. And with AAA games being more and more formulaic and less innovative, indie games have been filling that void. But what the hell is an indie game?
Welcome to our channel Moostank, where we butt antlers as game devs, trying to understand the industry a little better and also talk about things that fascinate us.
I'm Tess, a junior 3D artist trying to get a footing in the industry.
And I'm Victor, who worked at a AAA studio for 2 years as a UX/UI designer. Defining an indie game is a little tricky. There are many different interpretations of what defines a game as indie. The most obvious and most crucial is that the person, people, or studio making the game is independent from outside control, such as a major investor or publisher.
This doesn't mean that only games made by one person or very small team can be classified as indie. We came across a couple of terms that help us understand the different configurations that are still defined as indie. The AAA version of indie games are the III indies that are developed by larger, well-funded studios. Sandfall Interactive, creators of Clair Obscur Expedition 33, a really good game, is one such studio. Even though they had a budget of about $30 million, they are still an independent studio and therefore technically fall under the umbrella of III.
Below that is the middle market studios, professional companies that lack the AAA level of funding. A case could be made for Supergiant Games, the people behind Hades, to be in the middle market. Another studio, Zaum, the creators of Disco Elysium, is also in this threshold of indie games. At the release they had more than 60 employees, and most of the budget came from different investors such as Margus Linnemäe, the richest man in Estonia. Sources still cite it to be low budget, that the creators had to begin by selling their car for income.
Then we have studios that are compiled of very small teams, such as Team Cherry, the guys who made Hollow Knight. Playdead, the creators of Limbo and Inside, also started in this category, with only 8 people in development of Limbo between 2006 and 2010, with occasional freelancers to help. And the success from the game also helped them get rid of investors and become truly independent.
And lastly, the hobbyist, where one person creates a game with the focus being on passion rather than anything else. Mostly these are heard of in the mainstream when they've hit the big times through either social media or easy game loops. Prime examples being Concerned Ape and Notch, creators of Stardew Valley and Minecraft respectively. There are other factors that can help define what an indie game is aside from only looking at the size and budget of the studio. Take the aforementioned Sandfall Interactive. Most people probably wouldn't define them as an indie studio at all, but rather a AA studio, which is kind of a middle area for medium-sized studios to fall under.
A few things that we think most people would agree on when defining indies is that they often have a larger focus on unique storytelling and/or innovative gameplay ideas. Areas where AAA studios often fall short. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are tons of excellent AAA titles with incredible storytelling and gameplay, but nowadays it does feel like most of the games coming from large corporations are either incredibly generic or use the same game formula they've been using for years, oftentimes both. For those that don't know, AAA games can be compared to big Hollywood blockbusters, kinda like the Marvel Cinematic Universe or Star Wars. They are games made by very large studios with tons of money and oversight from even larger investors and publishers. They're made to make as much money as humanly possible and usually take years to make, often focusing on incredible graphics above innovation.
Let's find out what the difference between AAA and indie is, and why indies have become so popular in recent years. Like we mentioned before, AAA games have become much more formulaic and stagnant over the past decade or so. There are always exceptions that have delivered amazing storytelling and gameplay because of the budget and the studio size. This combined with good oversight and a good track record can produce some incredible games. God of War Ragnarok is one such example for me. The gameplay is tons of fun, the semi-open world design works perfectly for that type of game, and the story is just mwah.
And for me, it's definitely The Last of Us 2, with gripping cinematics and morally questionable choices all in the name of revenge. And women who get to be angry, strong, change their mind, and don't cater to the male gaze. It's a top tier game for me for sure. But for every Ragnarok and Last of Us, there are a bunch of mediocre Assassin's Creeds, Call of Duties, and Dragon Ages. There are aspects of those games that are very well designed. Dragon Age Veilguard has very immersive and gorgeous environments, but are trying to make up for the lack of story and boring gameplay the game is delivering. The gunplay in Call of Duty feels really good, and the historical aspects of Assassin's Creed are really cool, but both games haven't pushed the envelope in terms of innovation for decades. The parkour system in the first Assassin's Creed was innovative, and they managed to evolve that little by little. And when Assassin's Creed Unity launched, they took the last metaphorical leap forward with iterating on the parkour. Since then, basically every Assassin's Creed has looked the same. They even turned a franchise that had no right being an RPG into just that, with Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla. But that rant is a different video though.
A lot of AAA games often get a rating of 7 out of 10, which is not necessarily bad. In fact, it's a pretty good score, and therefore a pretty good game. The issue is that it seems like big studios aim to make mediocre games. We think it's okay for a game to turn out mediocre as long as the studio is trying to do something different. Not every idea is a good idea, but striving for mediocrity in order to capitalize on a player base so that executives can fill their pockets is insane and counterintuitive to what good game design should be. The words market safe and predictable in revenue isn't a good basis for making creative games and gameplay that has never been done before. Most designers, both in gaming and other areas, would agree with the saying, if you design for everyone, you design for no one. That being said, not every game can be for everyone, and we think that's part of why indie games have been doing so well in the last decade and why AAA games have been doing worse.
The indie scene has been churning out masterful and creative games at a much faster rate than the AAA studios can manage, often pushing deadlines for polish or early review changes, making us wait years for the next installment.
Looking at you, GTA 6 and Horizon 3.
The turnaround is faster since dropping an indie game doesn't have the same big impact for the community. Take the game Peak, developed by AgroCrab and Landfall as an example. AgroCrab were developing their sequel going under too when they started losing funding. They decided to pivot to create Peak together with Landfall, which was based on a month-long game jam they had created the year before. But what is it about indie titles that players enjoy so much? Indie games usually explore more unconventional storytelling and themes that AAA studios seldom do. Mental health being one of the most popular themes to explore in different ways. Games such as Celeste, Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, and Disco Elysium all dive into different aspects of mental health struggles that resonate with players all over the world. After years of AAA studios letting players down with bland stories, we think that people have been craving something different and unique and have found that in indie games.
The indie scene is generally more inclusive in their storytelling as well, reaching audiences that can finally see themselves in the characters they're playing. And despite what some people think, representation is incredibly important in all aspects of life, and games are no exception. Being able to see yourself in a character can help people find themselves. It can build confidence and plant the seed of creativity in some cases. We're not saying AAA games only consist of white men in leading roles. The industry has been doing better, little by little, but a lot of the biggest games out there are often spearheaded by a white man. The last big reason why we think indies have become so popular that we want to bring up is that they are often champions of innovation in terms of gameplay. While AAA studios often rely on tried and tested gameplay mechanics, indie studios try to push the borders of creativity because they don't have a publisher overlord looking over their shoulder, telling them what they can and cannot do. They design with passion and fun, not money in mind. For example, Egging On, created by Ego Bounce, where your main character is an egg that rolls around. Also, Megabonk by Vedinad, where all you do is power up automatic attacks to defeat hordes of monsters and walk around. Obviously, indie studios and solo devs want to make money when they release a game. But if you design a game with the purpose of making money, players more often than not will not have fun playing the game, because the developers did not have fun making the game. Passion leads to developers having fun making the game, which in turn leads to players having fun.
In the future, we think there will be more of a middle ground of games that are either indie or AA. The new trend is designing with innovation and creativity in mind. Publishers are taking note of the successful indie games and they try to replicate it for the bigger companies. There's also an increase in collaborations and support funding for indie projects. be it angel investors or grants for indie startups to finish their game idea. There will also be a lot of newly formed indie companies that create their own smaller versions of cinematic universes. Hollow Knight was followed up by Silksong, which broke Steam purchasing, or the upcoming Haunted Chocolatier by Concerned Ape, set in the same style as Stardew Valley. Peak creators AgroCrab, teasing their next crazy online multiplayer Crash Out crew, are still catering to what they like to make and what the community loves about these games. At least this is what we're hoping is going to happen in the industry, but what do you think?
We've been loving playing indie games recently and just wanted to hype them up. So tell us in the comments what your favorite indies are at the moment. We'd love to hear about it. Until next time.
See ya!